What's up, guys? So I decided to talk about Dandelion next, but then I figured I was like, you know what? Talking about Dandelion, I'm gonna be talking about Geralt as well. So there's really no way that I could talk about anybody without talking about Geralt. So I think all of these are gonna be Geralt related. So Dandelion, when it comes to the games, he was actually not one of my favorites. In Witcher 2, I was kind of disappointed when I saw Dandelion. Not only because of the way he looked, but the way he sounded and the way that he talked, just the way that he acted. I was like, this is not Dandelion. Like, it just, the representation I felt was not good. And I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. I'm hoping so much that he is more like done more justice in Witcher 3. He already looks better, I think. I think he looks more like Dandelion's described in the books. And I'm not saying he has to be exactly like in the books, but I don't see why they would want to change him because he's already freaking perfect in the books. He's by far one of my favorite characters. I mean, aside from being hilarious, he also does a lot for Geralt's character, like the way that Dandelion supports Geralt, his character as a character. I think with Dandelion, Geralt he becomes a little more social. He becomes a little more aware of what's going on around him. And he doesn't become as secluded as he likes to be or as he usually is. Cause I mean, he really doesn't like to be alone. He prefers to have company to talk to. So he really enjoys Dandelion's company. In the book Last Wish, Dandelion accompanies Geralt in a lot of the stories. He does in Sword of Destiny as well. But I think in Sword of Destiny, it's more of like, oh, Dandelion popped up and he's like just there by chance. But here in Last Wish, they actually travel together. The reason why Dandelion follows Geralt, I mean, not only because they're friends, but also because Dandelion is a troubadour. He's a bard, as I said previously. He sings poems, he plays the lute, and they're all about either The Witcher or The Witcher and Yennefer. You know, he sings about his travels with Geralt mostly. So he doesn't always tell the truth, but I'm going to read a part where he says why he changes the truth sometimes. I think Dandelion's stories and poems about The Witcher really flesh Geralt out as a human, as somebody in the crowd, and not as this mutant that's separate from everyone else. Especially the way that Dandelion tells them. He tells a story of love. He tells like a romantic story between him and between Geralt and Yennefer. And I really need to go into the story in Sword of Destiny that was just it was so touching. It was so sad. And you got to see a different side to Dandelion because Dandelion is usually depicted as this womanizer, pretty rude sometimes, where you just want to slap him. But I was talking to someone about this, the themes of The Witcher when it comes to misogyny and sexism and racism. Dandelion represents a lot of that stuff. And it's like, how is he such a great character if he does this stuff? Like, why, if he treats women like this? You get the idea that Dandelion, in most of the stories, that Dandelion just sees women as a piece of meat. Like, you know, I'm gonna hit that, you know? He almost lives in brothels. He enjoys women to the fullest. But in the story A Little Sacrifice in Sword of Destiny, you see a different side to Dandelion. You see that there's more to him, that he's not just this womanizer. I think Sapkowski does that very well. And for people that don't read the books and just play the games, it's hard for them to see why these themes are there. It's not just because Sapkowski was this, racist, sexist guy. No, he has these themes in here because this is a mature story. The games are mature. The stories, the books are mature. Um, and this world is dark. It's not a fairy tale. It's not a fantasy land where, where everyone lives happily ever after. It's a dark world, not only full of sexism and racism, it's full of death and monstrous things. That's the big thing about The Witcher is monstrous acts. And not just from monsters, but from humans, from people, the way that they treat each other. And I think that's more of the theme that Sapkowski wanted people to understand, is that sometimes people are worse. It's part of the setting, the sexism, the racism, especially between elves and humans and all that. He makes a big deal about that because it's part of the setting. It's part of the feeling of the world. Like, he wants you to feel what it's like to live in a world like this. It's not all happy. But every now and then, he'll take characters that seem to represent something, like, say, a monster. A monster represents evil or whatever. But sometimes he'll make monsters help Geralt, where they're just like, in one of the stories here, this a Doppler, or it's called, or another way of calling it is a mimic. It's a creature that some people see as monstrous because it looks monstrous, and that also slips into the whole racism idea. Is that if they don't look like me, they're not normal. They're not. I can't be with them. So what Sapkowski is doing is he's kind of almost playing with that idea that it's not just monsters that people see as different or afraid of. It's also intelligent creatures like elves or even a mimic, because a mimic is not dangerous. Like Geralt will say, he's like, I don't hunt these creatures. They're not dangerous. They're part of an intelligent species. And the creature says to him, he's like, I just want to survive. Like, humans, I think it was the city of Novigrad. I think it was Novigrad, the capital city. They destroyed, because they made Novigrad. They destroyed his home, where the Dopplers lived peacefully in the wilderness. And they're like, where do we go? They're like, we have nowhere to go. So they live in the city, and what they do is they imitate people. They look like they're a mimic. They look like somebody else. So you think it's someone, but it's not. It's actually a creature. So they're like, I just want to live here. Like, I just want to, like, be someone. But the creature can't really be itself without it being pointed at. People want to burn it at the stake because it's so different, because it's a monster. And the reason why I'm mentioning this with Dandelion, you might be like, what does this have to do with Dandelion? Because Dandelion kind of represents a theme that is not acceptable by a lot of people. It makes people uncomfortable. Like, there is a part in the very first story that kind of made me feel uncomfortable because of how Dandelion was acting. There was a part with Yennefer, and one of some guys that they were with, they tied her up on one of the wagons, and they like ripped her shirt open and stuff, and she's pretty much like half naked standing there. And Dandelion and Geralt were tied up as well on a different cart. And Dandelion's just like staring at her and like ogling, and she's like, don't look at me. It was a scene where you could really feel the embarrassment. There was no respect whatsoever, especially from Dandelion. Like, I really wanted to just slap him because of the way that he was acting. Like, he was just staring at Yennefer, and Yennefer was telling Geralt, make him stop looking at me. And Geralt and Dandelion was like, of course I'm gonna look at you. I'm gonna die. They're gonna freaking kill me. I'm gonna look at you. I don't even care. That's what I thought for for a minute where I was like, not you, Dandelion. Seriously, like you're gonna make me hate you. But then afterwards you see that that's just part of the world. That's how they live. And Dandelion, and later on in the story, a little sacrifice, a different one from that one. You see a different side to Dandelion. So it's you see different sides to everyone. I think that's what I love the most about these books is that everyone is complex. No one is simple. No one is just one way where you're like, okay, he's the funny one, he's the whatever. Um, no one, not even Dandelion. When Dandelion really represents the humor and the crude humor um, of a lot of the stories. Uh, in this one, A Little Sacrifice, I was in tears where I'm like, oh my god, you see a completely different side to Dandelion. That kind of dualistic personality, that kind of change, like complete change, I think is what Sapkowski is trying to show you, that not everyone is a stereotype. Not everyone is one specific way. You know what I mean? Like everyone could be good, everyone could be bad. It's extremely relatable. It's very real. This story, A Little Sacrifice in Sword of Destiny, it goes into sea monsters, sea creatures. And I think that's a big thing for The Witcher 3 because we're going to see that. We're going to see sea creatures you're going to go out and see. And you're going to, I think this is a very important story just to know how Geralt feels about the sea. He is completely intimidated by the sea. He's like, we know nothing about the sea. He when he thinks of the sea, he thinks of worry. There are creatures in the sea that he doesn't even know of. He doesn't even know how to deal with them. There's this part in here where I mean they do deal with sirens, mermaids, that kind of thing, and he kind of speaks the language as well of the sirens. It's hard for him to express it, but he does understand it. Before I go into details of the story, let me talk a little bit about Essie. Essie Davin, or Little Eye, also known as Little Eye, she looks like she's young. We don't know exactly how old she is, but she looks like she's like 18. No, like no less than 18, but around there. She's also a bard, and that's how Essie and Dandelion know each other. So in the beginning of the story, when Geralt and Dandelion come out, they're together and they're like, did you get any jobs? And he's like, no. And he's like, man, I didn't either. Dandelion's like, you're way too picky. Like, you seriously, you need to like, you're always like, oh, I'm not going to take that job because of this, or I don't kill dragons, or this and that. And he's like, you've got to start taking some jobs because we need to eat. But while they're arguing, someone comes to them and he's like, oh, are you Dandelion, the troubadour? And Dandelion's like, why, yes. He's Dandelion, if there's one thing, he is absolutely full of himself, pompous. He's like many people have called him, he's a rock star, kind of. He is good at what he does. A lot of people do really love his work. He is pretty famous. Almost everyone knows who Dandelion is. So when this guy sees that this is Dandelion, he's like, why, yes, I am Dandelion. And he's like, oh, you have to, my daughter is getting married, and my wife, she wants you to sing at the party, at the wedding or whatever, the reception. And but he's like, I already got another bard there, but my wife insists that you be part of this. She wants you to be there. And Dandelion tries to like play it off. He's like, what? I'm gonna be second? I'm gonna be second to another bard? He's like, no, I need to be the main attraction and this and that. And Geralt's like, dude, you need to take this job because we need to eat. And he's like, I promise I'll take the next job. Like whatever I get offered, I'll take it if you take this. So Dandelion's like, so he accepts, and he's like, who's this other bard? And the guy says, Essie Davin. He says Little Eye is a poet and a gifted singer, but not without some ill-mannered faults, if I can trust my ears, not without them in the least. What she's singing now is actually none other than one of my ballads. Just wait, she'll hear my performance, and we'll see the Little Eye squint in envy. So they got to the reception, and a Little Eye, or Essie, is already singing, and she's singing one of Dandelion's songs. Geralt's like, Dandelion, for pity's sake, they'll throw us out. And Dandelion's like, don't interfere, this is a professional matter, let's go. So you automatically think that Dandelion's gonna pull something, he's gonna like either flirt with this girl or he's gonna totally put her down. So here's a little description of Essie. In a cute and friendly little face, distinguished by nothing in particular, there burned and shone a dark blue eye, beautiful, huge, hypnotic. The second eye of Essie Davin was mostly covered by a golden circlet that fell across her cheek, which she habitually adjusted by shaking her head or puffing at it. Thus, the second eye of Small Eye was unveiled, revealing a perfect similarity with the first. So her eye was covered by like a circlet, so she'd go like this a lot, and like, and Dandelion says, "Hi, Little Eye. You sang a beautiful ballad earlier. You have significantly improved your repertoire. I've always said that when one can't write one's own verse, one must borrow it from others. Is that common practice for you?" "Not really. It's been known to happen, not as often as I would like, but I usually don't have the option. The lyrics are poorly written, and the melodies, while certainly enjoyable and unpretentious in their simplicity, if not downright simplistic, don't measure up to my listeners' expectations. You've written something new, Dandelion, I hadn't heard." "Not surprisingly," the bard replied with a sigh. "I sing my ballads in places where only the most gifted and famous artists are invited, just the kind of place where I never see you." Essie flushed crimson and blew on her circlet. "It is a fact," she said, "that I am not in the habit of frequenting brothels. I find their atmosphere depressing. It saddens me that you have to perform in such places, but so it goes. When you have no talent, you don't have the luxury of choosing your audience." This time it was Dandelion who blushed hotly. Little Eye smiled happily and immediately fell upon his neck, kissing him noisily on the cheek. "Dandelion, you dear old fool," Essie said, continuing the hug. "I'm so glad to see you in good health, physical and mental." "Hey, doll." Dandelion lifted the tiny girl and whirled her around until the ruffles of her dress twirled. "You were wonderful, by the gods. I haven't heard such lovely wickedness in a long time. Your quarrels are even better than your singing, and you are beautiful too." I was like, he calls her doll. She's something different. She's something much more to Dandelion. And this is where you realize that Dandelion isn't just this pervert, this womanizer, only capable of thinking dirty thoughts with women. He's not. He actually sees Essie as a little sister. And it's adorable. Their relationship is absolutely adorable, and you never saw this side to Dandelion in another story, never. And the most interesting thing was this part where, after the party, actually, Essie actually starts falling in love with Geralt, and Geralt feels something for her. He even kisses her, at the party. But after the kiss, Essie like walks away. She leaves, where she's like, I'm not gonna sleep with you if that's what you wanted. So after the party, Geralt is already in the room where they're staying. It's a cheap little room. He's laying down on like a bed made of hay. And Dandelion walks in and he sits down, and Geralt's like, "Oh, you actually came home. I thought you were gonna stay with some girl or something." And Dandelion's like kind of annoyed. They're both laying down on the same bed, and and Dandelion asks him, "What's the matter with you? Does it bother you that I chase after girls? Since when? Would you have me take an oath of purity like a druid? Or maybe quit posturing, I'm tired. Haven't you noticed that we have a mattress and a roof over our heads for the first time in 2 weeks? The idea that you won't be roughly shaken awake tomorrow doesn't make you crazy with joy? For me," mused Dandelion, "a mattress without a young woman isn't a mattress." It is incomplete happiness, and what good is incomplete happiness? Geralt groaned softly, enjoying the sound of his own voice. Dandelion continued his late night chatter. Incomplete happiness, it's like an interrupted kiss. Why are you grinding your teeth, may I ask? You're terribly boring, Dandelion. You have no subjects of conversation except for beds, girls, asses, breasts, incomplete happiness, and kisses interrupted by dogs set upon you by parents of giddy brides. Apparently, you can't stop yourself. Only the frivolity or the debauchery enables you to compose ballads, write poems, and sing. It is, you see, the dark side of your talent. The Witcher had spoken with emotion. Dandelion had no trouble reading his sentiments. Aha! The bard replied serenely. This must be because of Essie Davin, our little eye. She cast her pretty little eye over the Witcher and started sowing disorder. He went off violently in front of the princess, and instead of blaming himself, he reproaches me, for I don't know what hidden agenda. You talk a lot of crap, Dandelion. No, my friend, Essie made a big impression on you. Don't deny it. I don't see anything wrong with it, but be careful not to put a foot wrong. She is not as you imagine her. If her talent has many dark sides, they aren't the ones you think. I see, the Witcher said. You know her very well. Quite well. But not in the way you think. No. It's amazing to hear you admit it. You really are stupid. The bard stretched, placing his hands on his neck. I've known Little Eye almost since she was a child. For me, she's like a little sister. I repeat, don't make any stupid moves with her. You would do a lot of damage because she's fallen for your charms too. Admit that. You want her. Even if I did, I don't usually talk about these things unlike you. I don't compose songs on the subject. Thank you for what you told me about her. It actually saved me from making a stupid mistake. Now drop it. As far as I'm concerned, the matter is closed. Dandelion lay in silence for a moment. Geralt nonetheless knew his companion well. I know, the poet said finally. I understand everything. You don't understand anything, Dandelion. Do you know what your problem is? You appear to be something that you're not. You flaunt your otherness, what you consider to be your abnormality. You impose this upon yourself, never understanding that for most ordinary people, you yourself are one of the most normal people who ever lived. What difference does it make that your reflexes are faster, that your pupils become vertical slits in the sun, that you can see in the dark like a cat, and that you can cast whatever spell you know? What do I care? I once knew an innkeeper who could fart for 10 minutes without interruption, and in this way managed to interpret the melody of the psalm, Welcome, welcome, the morning star. Aside from what one might call his talent, he was a perfectly normal innkeeper with a wife, children, and a paralytic grandmother. Could you explain what this has to do with Essie Davin? Of course. You wrongly assumed that Little Eye was interested in you for dubious, even perverse reasons, that she looked at you with the fascination reserved for a unicorn. I didn't witness the events that followed, but I noticed that you left the room and her cheeks were red when you re-entered. Yes, Geralt, I'll inform you of a mistake you made. You wanted to get revenge for the, in your opinion, prurient interest that she displayed. You then decided to take advantage of her fondness for you. I say again, you're talking crap. You tried, the bard continued without budging from the mattress, to get her into bed by showing her what it's like to go to bed with a monster, a mutant, a witcher. Fortunately, Essie showed herself to be smarter than you are and tremendously sympathetic to your stupidity, whose causes she understands. I infer this from the fact that you did not return from the terrace with a black eye. Have you finished? I'm finished. Fine. Good night. I know why you fidget and grind your teeth. Of course, you know everything. I know that you've been tortured to the point where you aren't capable of understanding normal women, but you're under Yennefer's thumb. The devil knows what you see in her. Drop it, Dandelion. Really, you wouldn't prefer a normal girl like Essie. But what can those sorceresses have that Essie doesn't? Age? Perhaps Little Eye is early in her youth, but she is at least as old as she looks. Do you know what Yennefer told me one day after some drinks? Ha! She told me she did it with a man for the first time in the year that the plow was invented from. She did it with a man for the first time in the year that the plow was invented from two plowshares. You're lying. Yennefer likes you as much as a malevolent pestilence. She would never have admitted anything like that to you. You're right. I lied. I admit it. You don't have to. I know you well. It seems to you that you know me. Never forget that human nature can be complex. Dandelion, sighed the Witcher, falling halfway asleep already. You're nothing but a cynic, a disgusting womanizer, and a liar. Nothing about that, believe me, is truly complex. Good night. Good night, Geralt. Dandelion is capable of loving a beautiful girl in a way like a sister. And it was really touching for me to see that side of Dandelion. It really opens your eyes to what Sapkowski's doing with these characters, is that he's almost making you fall into that idea, fall into those stereotypes. He's almost making you believe one thing, but then he changes it completely on you, and you're like, oh man, like just as The Witcher was misinterpreting Dandelion, even though he says, I know you, he thought at first that Essie was just another one of his, another one of his conquests or something. And he thought that Dandelion was just going to stay at the party with some girl. But he was wrong. There's more to people than what you see. A lot of people almost prefer Geralt to have stayed with Essie than Yennefer, because Essie is more, she's just more, I don't know, there's just something sweet about Essie. She's a sweet girl. She's a very smart girl. I almost thought she was a mermaid, made human. That's what I was thinking, but it never went into that. She could speak with the mermaids. She speaks the same language. She speaks it way better than Geralt. So she's extremely intelligent. Essie also looks into Geralt's soul almost. She says, you are sensitive, she said softly, worried to the very depths of your soul. Your stony face and your glacial voice don't fool me. Your sensitivity puts you in fear of raising your sword against an opponent who has a moral advantage over you. And Geralt keeps saying, no. Like, no, Essie. Don't look to me for the subject of moving ballad of the internally conflicted Witcher. I might like that to be the case, but it isn't. My code and my training resolve every moral dilemma. In that, I am well prepared. No, you're not. So a lot of times she's trying to make him understand that he's more than what he thinks he is. He's not just this mindless killer. He's got sensitivity. He's got feelings. But he keeps telling him, no, the code resolves all my dilemmas. And it's like, no, it doesn't, Geralt. Like, throughout the whole freaking book, your code has done nothing. Nothing. It's only taught you how to fight monsters. But when it comes to everything else, when it comes to life, when it comes to who he is, when it comes to the woman he loves, when it comes to going on, it does absolutely nothing. It does not solve any dilemmas. It only gives him more dilemmas. I mean, he does care for Essie, but he doesn't love her because he loves Yennefer. But at the end of this story, oh my god, I have to read you guys the ending because it's so sad. I was like, before it ends, when I said that Geralt goes investigates these killings of these fishermen, it's out in the ocean, right? So he's like, I don't even know what we're gonna find here. He's kind of scared because he doesn't know a lot about sea creatures. And Dandelion's like, oh, let me go with you. And he's like, what? No, you're not coming with me. And he's like, no, I want to go because tomorrow is Essie's birthday. And he's like, and I want to find her something. I want to get her a gift. He says, besides, it's Doll's birthday tomorrow. I'm like, oh. And Geralt says, I don't see the connection. He says, pity. We normal people are in the habit of giving gifts at birthdays. Since we don't have the money to buy something, I'll find something at the bottom of the sea. And Geralt says, a herring? A cuttlefish? Dandelion says, You can be such an idiot. I'll find amber, a seahorse, or perhaps a pretty shell. It's the symbol that's important, a sign of thoughtfulness and affection. I like Little Eye, and I want to make her happy. Don't you understand that? That's what I thought. Come on, you first, because a monster could strike at any instant. So they go, and it's just so adorable to see Dandelion like picking up shells and like, oh, maybe she'll like this one or maybe she'll like that one. It's so cute, and Geralt's like all on edge because he doesn't know what's gonna come out. This sea monster that's like a titan, almost like a sea titan or something, like freaking, I don't know. I don't even know what it was. I think he called it like an icky something. So when they're gonna depart, when they're all gonna go their separate ways, they decided that they're all gonna separate. So, before they separate, they get together, just the three of them, to have like this little campfire together, like this last meal. So they do end up getting together that night. But it's not for Geralt. It wasn't real. He pretty much was just doing it for her, just so that the tension would be resolved. Because he's in love with Yennefer. It's like, I'm sorry, she loves him, but it's just not mutual. As much as he cares for her, he doesn't really love her. Dandelion, absorbed by the glow of the fire that was going on out little by little, remained seated and played a few discreet chords on his lute. He began with a few measures that he transformed into a quiet melody. The words were born with the music, captured by it like insects in translucent amber. The ballad recounted the story of a certain witcher and of a certain poet. The circumstances of their encounter at the seaside, amid the squalling of the gulls, their mutual love at first sight, the sincerity of their love, their indifference toward a death that could not destroy this love, nor separate them. Dandelion knew that few would believe the story told by the ballad, but he didn't care. One writes a ballad for the emotion it conveys. Dandelion could have changed, some years later, the content of that ballad to reflect the truth. He did not. The true story was indeed moving. Who would hear, indeed, that the witcher and the poet parted and never saw each other again? That 4 years later, Little Eye died of smallpox in Vizima during an epidemic. That Dandelion carried her body in his arms, far from the funeral pyres, burning away in the city, alone and quiet, into the forest, and buried with her, according to her wishes, two objects, her lute and the azure pearl with which she was never parted. No, Dandelion kept the first version of his ballad, but he never sang it again, not ever for anyone. In the morning, a hungry and furious werewolf took advantage of the darkness of the night that had not yet dissipated and invaded the camp, but recognizing the voice of Dandelion, he listened for a moment to the melody before disappearing in the forest. As sad as that ending is, I thought it was beautiful. It was a beautiful ending, and I'm glad that it ended that way, with Dandelion doing this. That pearl was the pearl that Dandelion found her for her birthday. And Dandelion even said, because you know how Geralt was like, oh, what are you gonna get her, a cuttlefish or whatever? He was like making fun of it, that Dandelion wanted to find her a birthday gift. Dandelion found a shell, and when it broke open, there was a pearl in there, that azure pearl. And Essie loved it. The sweetest thing is that Dandelion said, I wanted to get you a birthday present. And he says, Geralt picked it out. So it's like, it was not true. Dandelion was the one that picked it. He was the one that risked his life to go look for a birthday present for Essie. And he said that Geralt had chosen it for her. So she thought, it was so important for her because of how much she loved Geralt. But Dandelion did that to make her happy, and said that to make her happy. And it was like, oh my god. Like, that's where you really see the complexity of Dandelion's character. Geralt calls him a liar, because he doesn't say the way, his ballads are usually changed. But he says himself, you have to do this for emotion. He wants to make people feel something. And if that something is going to be the truth, this horrible truth, that she ended up dying and never seeing him again, he doesn't want to say it. Like, he's like, I don't want to sing that. So instead he sings something, even though they're not going to believe it. He sings something that people probably want to hear more. They want to think that it ended happily ever after, even though it didn't. And for Dandelion to feel that way, for that to be important to someone like Dandelion, I think that says a lot about his character. I think it says a lot about who he is. In many cases, I think his purpose, one of his biggest purposes in these stories, are to keep Geralt grounded. So many times, Geralt's just like wandering the wilderness and he'll see Dandelion stuck somewhere. And he's like, oh, Geralt! It's like, oh, Dandelion! Dandelion represents the human side that Geralt still has. He kind of like grounds him in it. Especially, not always. You don't always see it. Again, there's this story that really fleshes out Dandelion, who he really is. And then there's another story, like Eternal Fire. Eternal Fire, you see Dandelion. This Dandelion that everyone thinks he is. This scum, worthless singer, crook. He gets kicked out by his girlfriend, because he's been with another girl. And here all he wants to do is just drink, go to brothels, and that's pretty much all he wants to do. Instead of going into, oh, he's so funny, and because he's got some of the funniest lines. He's so much more. If you thought he was funny in the games, you have no idea. You're missing out. If you like Dandelion in the games, you're missing out, because he is 100 times better in the books. There's so many stories that I want to go into. The Bounds of Reason is also really good. It's the first story on here. He's going to explain something that's going on. The bard seized the neck of his lute and violently strummed some chords. What would you prefer, in verse or in prose? Normally. As you like. Dandelion did not lay down his lute. Listen well, noble sirs. The events took place 1 week ago, not far from a free city named Hollowpool. Yes, in the small hours of the morning dawn tinting red the veil of mist in the meadows, it was supposed to be normally. The Witcher pointed out. That is normally, isn't it? Okay, I understand. Briefly, without metaphors, near the town of Hollowpool, a dragon alit. I think that's really what I wanted to talk about when it comes to Dandelion, is show you a different side to him. That I think the games really did not do a good job at showing. Just how special of a character Dandelion is. I always get the feeling that these stories are almost being told by Dandelion. A lot of his ballads are named in the titles of the stories. He's a big part of who Geralt is, of his personality. He kind of, like I said, I feel like Dandelion grounds him in the world of the humans. He keeps him informed. He snaps him out of his little, I'm a mutant, of his little moments where he just like pretends or feels like he's an outsider and he's such an outcast. Dandelion's there to like go, dude, you're not that different, dude. You're pretty damn normal. I don't know how big of a role he's gonna have in Witcher 3, but I hope he has a bigger role. It would be really cool to go on quests and Dandelion's there with you, because that's how it is. A lot of times, that's how it is in the books. Geralt's on some dangerous mission and Dandelion's right there with him. Even though Dandelion could not save himself for nothing, Geralt has to protect him all the time, and Dandelion doesn't fight. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys learned a little bit something different from Dandelion, and not just Dandelion. I did mix a lot of stuff into this one because I think Dandelion is a good representation of a lot of the themes in the books. I think they could be really misinterpreted and judged in a way that may not be very fair to the author, because the author was doing this a lot of times on purpose in order to set this, the feeling, the setting, the world, the environment. And in order to do that well, he has to incorporate a lot of themes that just don't sit well with people, that make people kind of uncomfortable, that make people react emotionally, react in so many different ways, in such real ways. So you know how horrible things are. So that you see that the monsters, those griffins, those werewolves, those vampires, are probably not the only thing you should be worried about. You should be more worried about your neighbor. If you're an elf and your neighbor's a human, you should be more worried about that guy than about the werewolf. And the monsters are there to show you just how bad it is. To show you that a lot of times those monsters aren't that bad. One of the first trailers that E3, I saw it at E3 2013. One of the first trailers for The Witcher, the No Man's Land one, he stops because they're treating this woman bad, and Geralt stops and he's like, I just can't walk away. So he goes back and just knocks these guys out, teaches them a lesson, and the guy's like, what are you doing? And he says, killing monsters. That's it right there. That's the world of The Witcher. All of these themes are a constant issue in everyone's life, not just women, but men as well. Men are tortured and murdered in this world as well. This is a dark, monstrous world where your worst nightmare is not that vampire or that werewolf. It's Nilfgaard, or it's that, like I said, it's that neighbor that sees you as something different, and you are not that different from him. But just because you have pointed ears, he's gonna kill you. I do have something special planned for you guys when The Witcher comes out. I'll do a video the day The Witcher is released so that I could share some stuff with you guys, because I do have a lot to tell you guys. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.